please respond here if you're present tonight. John Aiken.
Here.
Mari Davis.
Here.
Robert Dudka. Alex Foster. Carmela Ham. Gerald Laporte.
Here.
Joan Lawrence is excused. Robert Menon.
Here.
Rebecca Meyer. Katie Myers.
Here.
Mark Turnbull.
Here.
Andrew Wenchel.
Here.
And Dick Woodruff.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. That's good. So I'll dive right into the explanation of the public hearing. So welcome again to the next meeting. Effective September 1st, 2022, new state regulation now requires certain board-appointed commissions, HLRB, have person form and conduct to conduct business. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment with streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board and members of the public joining this evening. Today's meeting will be available on your website via Microsoft Teams link. Also, a download option for those who do so. Board members, presenters, speakers, lose connectivity during today's meeting. Please reconnect via phone. Your device muted and video turned off until you are called upon to speak. Public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda. Pre-registration. Public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda. Registration to speak online at today's required. Speaking at the I call on you to speak after meeting chat is active. Meeting chat is active. Participants will need to use so. Will need to do so, but it's only available for our technical help. No comments can be made via the chat feature. All voting will be done by call of the roll. Lastly, today's public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to agreement information requirements. With that, we'll look to so we're actually going to postpone the approval of the February meeting minutes until October. So with that, we can dive into the consent agenda. Are there any comments, questions regarding the consent agenda item? So hearing none, all right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I second that.
Please call the roll.
Okay, please say yes if you support the consent agenda. Aiken.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Laporte.
Did you say Laporte?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Menon.
Yes.
Ms. Meyer.
Yes.
Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull.
Aye.
Mr. Wenchel.
Yes.
And Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
That we'll move on to the discussion agenda item at 2910 Columbia Pike, form-based code.
Sure, I'll take on this. This is the project that you all saw last month concerning the possibility of installing a kind of foldable window into this historic facade. Last month, the applicant came and was trying to consider the idea of demolishing the existing window openings to put in a much larger kind of full-length bifold window. Based on discussion that the HLRB had, it was determined that it wouldn't be appropriate to expand the size of the existing window openings, to use the sizes that are there now, and to come back to the DRC and the HLRB with a different kind of window installation. And that is what the applicant has done. The applicant was here during the March 1st DRC hybrid meeting, and the applicant had shown part of the project where there still was some form of demolition, which was about 8 inches of the wall below the windows. the existing window openings and a kind of shortened version of the folding windows. After some discussion with the DRC, it was determined that 8 inches of demolition wasn't appropriate to continue going back to the existing window openings. However, there was some discussion about, is it appropriate to have this kind of 5-pane foldable window being proposed? Some of the discussion with the DRC members was that there was kind of lack of symmetry going on with this kind of 5-pane panel, and it was made the suggestion of going more for a 4-panel folding window. So it kind of makes everything feel a bit even, as well as the DRC requested that the plans be updated to include the windows to the side of those kind of larger storefront windows, so that we could just get confirmation that those aren't changing, as well as reiterate the importance of keeping the existing window opening so everything stays with that kind of exact bottom line going on with the historic facade. So staff is recommending approval of the subject application as submitted. The applicant did come back and made the adjustment so that that demolition of the 8 inches below the window was no longer there, sticking with the existing window opening. And we had determined that with the proposal of this kind of 5-pane folding window, we still felt that the application complied to standards 2, 9, and 10 of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. And basically, in summary, we just kind of felt that, you know, we had provided during the February HLRB meeting some understanding of what the character defining features were of this historic facade. And we were in agreement that the existing window openings, the space of that was a character defining feature, but we did not feel that the fenestration pattern, because we really couldn't confirm that it was the historic fenestration pattern. We also felt that there needed to be a certain level of flexibility when it comes to our commercial spaces to kind of work with what they need. So we felt that, well, we had made the analysis that the fenestration pattern was not a character defining feature. Therefore, we didn't see that we could agree with what the DRC had made in their recommendation. And so the staff, you know, again, we recognize it's a historic commercial building, it needs to adapt, and that we believe that, you know, the existing window openings are going to be preserved, and that the idea of doing this 5-panel folding window was appropriate. And that, my quick summary. Is Mr. Khan here? Oh, Mrs. Khan.
Mr. Khan, are you on the line? If you're speaking, you're muted.
Can we go back to the photos? I just have a question. The drawings show that the windows on either side flanking it that are staying as true windows are at their existing elevation, and then the bifold windows still appear in the drawing to be larger. I know that we talked about the horizontal datum line of the 2 windows on that front facade, and then the windows on the return walls that you can't see in this elevation but in plan. You walk through the vestibule, and so from these drawings, it still to me reads that something is happening with.
That may just be because these are not necessarily the highest quality drawings. Because so right now, if you look at the existing show that the window's slightly higher, even in the existing plan right here. The demo plan shows it, so I think they're just bad at counting. Mr. Khan, can you confirm that if you happen to have joined? I think it was a last minute addition.
Any other comments or discussion?
I just have a question. So it's guaranteed that there will be no additional work, demolition work on those buildings. Is that
We've made that clear to Mr. Khan that any demolition to expand the window opening is not appropriate. was not what the HLB intended. So, and he agreed to that in the email, and he made updates. He had his architect update the plans. But yes, there's maybe some fluctuations, so we can confirm with him that his measurements need to show to be reflected in the drawings.
I would note that he may have to reinforce the bottom, because right now it is a stationary window, but as it becomes operable, he may have to add some kind of reinforcement on the bottom to allow that movement structurally, but there are no plans to change otherwise. He is going to come forward with the signage separately. We did ask for him to submit it. He said it's going to be the same as what's there now. There are two signs, so we're not sure what that means, but hopefully he will come to us next month with those. So any other additional things will be caught with that review as well.
Regarding the reinforcement, would that be on the inside of the building?
It would be on the inside. Because the windows right now, the way that the system is, it's on a track system, and the windows fall on the inside of the building. Because there can't be anything on the outside that would affect the public right of way.
Actually, my question too is it meant to kind of use as a sort of ventilation for the open? Like how does it?
I mean, I think it is ventilation. I think it's also, I think a lot of restaurants are kind of trending towards this indoor outdoor. It kind of adds a little bit more activation to the street, the pedestrian experience. But it's not seen as a requirement based on zoning and ventilation, like nothing like that. It's, I think, more for the experience and the aesthetics.
I just went back to the drawings that were submitted with the DRC that showed the 8-inch
Yes.
demo, and the dimensions on that are the same as this.
Okay. Thank you for catching that. You can.
They're showing on the DRC March 1st drawings that the existing opening is 7'11", and their proposed demo made it 8'6". And I think these drawings are also showing 8'6" with an opening.
I'll go back to him and find out why they are wrong, whether that's just, again, bad cat, or if he changed the numbers on the existing.
Does anybody feel that the sort of 5-pane division is an issue, or is that less an issue for the group?
I mean, in relation to the rest of the buildings on Columbia Pike, it does, I mean, as a Pike resident, it does kind of give me some pause on that. I wasn't sure there was any concern about that. I don't know if I can necessarily peg it to a particular standard.
Do the folding doors this open in or out?
They open in.
Start again.
And just for ease of use, having the 5-pane window does lower. Yeah. It doesn't particularly bother me because I don't think referencing in proportion that it's definitely not historic, but we've gotten past that.
I really don't think it matters that much about whether it's 4 or 5 windows. I think we've been through this several times. I think the applicant has tried to come up with something that works. So I think we got what we set out.
Another comment we can, I guess, what's the best way we handle this though? I mean, we need to sort of want to get sort of guarantee that they're going to maintain that data line across there. I think that they've agreed to within the drawings, I don't really agree with that. So kind of we conditionally accept this.
I was going to suggest if you want to do an approval conditional on final review by DRC. That's been done in the past, but make sure your motion clearly stipulates what those things DRC show.
The only other thing I could also say is we know that the existing window size is 7 feet by 13 feet. So if you wanted to say some type of conditional COA, understanding that there will be no demolition of the historic facade and that the existing window opening size will stay 7 feet by 13 feet.
7 feet. Oh, 7 foot 11 inches.
7 feet, 11 inches by 13 feet. So 7.11 inches by 13 feet. That could also get very clear and specific that needs to show. And it shows that in the drawings, makes that adjustment, then that would work.
Frame it that way. Now, vote on it or not, so in that case, then I'll. That, no further discussion, I guess we'll try to make a motion. So I move that HLRB approve the proposed Columbia Pike form-based code modification at 2910 Columbia Pike. Proposed modification complies with the standards 2, 9, and 10 of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Let me revise that. I move that HLRB approve the proposed Columbia Pike form-based code modification at 2910 Columbia Pike, so long as such that the proposed modification maintain existing window opening size of 7'11" by 13 feet wide. The proposed modification complies with its standards 2, 9, and 10 of Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Let's put that in the discussions.
Do we need a second first?
Second.
Do we need to add in that it comes back to DRC?
We should do that. Just-
Unless you want staff to confirm.
Complies with that, do you need to come in?
I suppose two options,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's your choice.
come back to DRC or
I
have.
would.
Get an accurate drawing.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get an accurate drawing and then it meets the, sorry, we've confirmed it, 7 feet by 13 feet.
7 feet by 13.
7
Okay.
feet by 13 feet is the existing window openings
Okay.
for each one.
Okay.
So again, if you were to update the drawings to show that 7 by 13 feet, then if we review it and that's confirmed, then that could be the approval.
Yeah, staff could review.
I think that's.
Right.
7 feet 11 inches.
Sorry, we just,
Sorry, that was, I misremembered something. You could also just say existing, because at this point, I don't know that I trust their measurements. So even the ones on the original drawing, so what if we said it has to comply with the exact existing opening? And that way we don't lock ourselves into a number if it's actually 7'2" or 6'8".
Yeah.
and I could go and measure it. I could have them take a picture and do a measurement.
I think we need some.
Yeah.
So proof of size to staff.
Yeah. Both sides of that.
You guys are, it's not a lot, but are you good with that? Because sometimes we add things to your plate.
Yes. It's gonna be more.
It's right next
Just ask,
It's right next to Lost Dog. I could grab some lunch.
Are you able to reach actual
Get to all that,
automatic
yeah.
or make it
Discussion.
Alright, so we're no longer putting the exact measurement there. That out. So I have it right now. I can read it out loud. Would you like me to read it out? I move that the HALRB approve the proposed Columbia Pike form-based code modification at 2910 Columbia Pike, such that the proposed modification maintain the existing window opening size. The proposed modification complies with standards 2, 9, 10 of the Secretary of Interior standards for REIT. And do you want me to add a sentence at the end that says staff don't have anything there?
Staff will confirm the opening size. Right, yeah.
Right. Don't you think we need a stipulation on
say in
And
screen?
and we're talking about 5 windows, which opens with 10 on each side. I'm just saying, you know, we've had issues before about this. You know, you could end up with 4 windows,
Oh, so that,
whatever. I'm just saying, you know, as shown on the drawings or whatever, but
Yeah, I would,
yeah,
maybe they should be required to submit a accurate drawings to staff. Showing, because I mean, I would think they'd get their drawings to whoever's installing the windows. And if they get these drawings to whoever's installing the windows, we might end up with bigger windows. So I still think it could be a staff approval. It would be nice if he probably didn't have to go back to the DRC, but I do think maybe, you know, conditional approval pending revised drawings that show that the windows shown here fit the existing window size.
We'll also
You
get
guys wouldn't have to go out there.
Well, we'll also get confirmation when he comes, he has to provide an elevation of for the signage as well. So we will see if he followed what he said he was going to.
For the windows, I don't think by code they would be allowed to switch out.
No,
So sidewalks.
he would have to get a public easement.
And then drawing shows.
So Andy, do you want to propose another sentence that deals with the configuration?
Well, I think we might as well say 5 windows of each side, upward, in-swinging windows. Be appropriate. Something like that. I just want to make sure that we get what they're suggesting, not another version.
And then Katie, do you want to kind of put in a sentence when you?
Yeah, I mean, I would,
Amended by committee.
I would say pending the middle of revised drawings that show that the length of the window. Height. Yeah, the height of the window. Because we know the width is okay. I mean, okay, let's say.
I think if we just say existing window opening size, how would you like to put it?
No.
Yeah.
Existing
I was furiously typing.
So I know, yeah. And on their existing, they also have. Their existing says 13 by 8.
Yeah, so this is their second set of existing, and it appears these are different numbers than they submitted to us in their first round drawing. Which Rebecca.
My concern really was, he told us that he had ordered
Right,
windows
these
for
are,
the
that's
full
why they're
height,
5, yeah.
and he's got them. I don't know what he did with them, but I would hate to see them.
Well, that's why
Try to
he
be
is
installed.
modifying these, I think. So they're the same doors that he had bought, and he has found someone who is going to cut them down to this, which is why he's proposing 5 still, instead of proposing something symmetrical.
Okay, so they will be cut down, so.
So we should be able to modify them to the size we need.
We're going to try this one more time so everyone sees it captures everything.
Alright, it's gonna be a little wordy. I move that the HALRB approve the proposed Columbia Pike form-based code modification at 2910 Columbia Pike, pending that the revised drawings show that the height of the window matches the existing window openings, and such that the proposed modification maintain the existing window opening size with in-swing operable windows with 5 panes. The proposed modification complies with standards 2, 9, and 10 of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Staff will confirm the window size prior to the approval of the COA.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
I'm sorry, I think it should be issuance of the COA because the HLD is approving it.
Okay, to the
Yeah.
issuance.
It's amended 5 times.
Second.
Okay, so your second still holds.
Please call the roll.
All right, so please say yes if you support the motion. Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Laporte?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Ms. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Winchell?
Yes.
And Mr. Woodruff?
Yes.
That's
Teamwork.
unanimous. It took us a while, but we got it.
We got it. Thanks everybody for that. Move on to administrative COAs. Question or comment about the administrative? To the marker views of.
Okay, so Mr. Bethare, are you on the line with us?
I'm here. Am I coming in okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So this is a submission from the park historian at Fort Ethan Allen, or park historian at Fort C.F. Smith. What is your title, John?
I am the park historian for the Conservation and Interpretation Unit of the Department of Parks and Recreation, Arlington County.
Oh, thank you. And so this is a request for a replacement marker for an existing one, but which would have new information on it. And this is part of a statewide Civil War Trail marker series or nationwide?
So Civil War Trails is a nonprofit public history organization that partners with individuals, private organizations, and local and state governments to provide Civil War themed interpretive signage in public places. Right now, they are active in 6 states, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, I believe one more. Anywho, in addition to providing signs for those 6 states, they also distribute their brochures widely to, tourism boards in states across the United States and even to countries around the world. So it is a very highly distributed series of maps that point out Civil War sites of interest in America. There are currently 6 Civil War Trails signs in Arlington County, and all of them are located in Arlington County parks. The Conservation and Interpretation Unit of Parks and Recreation pays an annual membership fee for 5 of those signs. 3 are located at Fort C.F. Smith Park, 1 is located outside of the Arlington Mills Community Center, and 1 is located at Glebe Park, just outside of Fort Ethan Allen Park. Now, to get a Civil War Trails sign, it usually requires a $2,000 fee to create a new sign and then a $200 annual fee for continued upkeep. And with the cost of that upkeep, you get free redrafts of the sign. They are willing to move the sign on their own. And they will also include the location of that sign in all of their marketing brochures and documents. So as the stewards of the current Civil War Trail signs in the Arlington parks, we're looking at how to make better use of the sign memberships that we currently have. We may be able to pursue new signs in the future, but before we look at new signs at new locations, we really want to look at how we can better use our current interpretive signs so that we are providing better Civil War interpretation at advertised sites across the country that tell better stories, and more equitable stories of the Civil War in Arlington. As such, we thought that the sign located at Glebe Park was one of the signs that was in need of a change. The current sign is the one that you see right now on the screen. It is entitled Mr. Lincoln's Forts. It provides a map of the Civil War defenses of Washington. It provides a mini map of Fort Ethan Allen, and it provides a photograph of Fort C.F. Smith. It contains three paragraphs of text, most of which is technical in nature, dealing with the reason for the fort, the geography around which the fort was placed, and a rather lengthy paragraph about the garrison and the armaments. Right now, the trend in Civil War trails is to move away from these highly technical military history based signs to tell more stories of human interest, to try and create more interest in our local sites of Civil War memory. So when it came time to decide what we wanted to do with this sign, we thought it would be most appropriate to remove the draft language as it exists now, since most of that language can be found on the 9 other interpretive signs located within Fort Ethan Allen, and instead use it to tell a new story. We wanted to use it to tell the story of the 107th United States Colored Troops. This was a regiment of African-American men raised near the end of the war in and around the counties around Louisville, Kentucky, and which spent the last year or so in and around the defenses of Washington, including the forts and camps of Arlington. There are some very famous photographs of the 107th USCT taken at Fort Corcoran and Fort Woodbury that have really come to exemplify the USCT cause in just about every major publication, major book, major documentary. If you study the USCT, you are likely looking at a picture of the 107th. And yet, Arlington County has no public interpretation that recognizes these soldiers who have become de facto symbols of the USCT cause in America. Now, we know from publications, from letters written, that the USCT were not simply placed at Fort Corcoran and Fort Woodbury where the photos were taken. If you go to the next page of the language proposal, you will notice an article from the Alexandria Gazette that was published right around the time the 107th arrived in Arlington County. You will notice at the top of the list, companies C and H were sent to garrison Fort Ethan Allen. The units would remain in the camps, primarily offering guard duty for some of the smaller sites, some of the federal buildings, some of the freedmen's camps, and were also involved in the physical decommissioning of the forts mentioned. Right around the same time that they arrive in Arlington, many of their members are detached to the quartermaster's department. And within a month or so of that happening, that is when much of the lumber provided at these various fortifications is placed at public auction by the quartermaster's department. So we are fairly confident that we can say the 107th were present at just about any fortification in Arlington that was active around the time of their arrival. And again, that is backed up by photographs at some forts, newspaper coverage in other forts, letters written by the officers at other forts. So it really is a widespread. Now, part of the reason why we really wanted this sign to be moved, not just to any location in Arlington, but further into Fort Ethan Allen in particular, is because of the existence of the current monument that you find in Fort Ethan Allen. If you want to go back to that first page, I believe we have an image. Yeah, perfect. So this is sort of the location in question. You will notice there is a circular platform with a pedestal at the center and 4 interpretive signs surrounding it. At the center of that pedestal is a metal relief map that shows Fort Ethan Allen in its intact form, perfectly oriented to the visitor. And below the pedestal, you will find the names of every state that sent state volunteers into the defenses of Fort Ethan Allen. So you'll find your typical northern states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, and so on. However, for whatever reason, when this map was designed, no consideration was given to federal volunteers, which the United States Colored Troops were considered. Now, they were federal volunteers, but they were also applied to the state of Kentucky's credit for troops in the Union Army. You will also not find the state of Kentucky mentioned on that bottom of the monument there. So in effect, what has accidentally happened is we have established a monument at Fort Ethan Allen to the defenders of Fort Ethan Allen that completely cuts out the narrative of Black soldiers at the fort. We believe that one of the best ways to correct this is by taking this new 107th monument and moving it closer, or this 107th sign, and moving it closer to this particular monument. We would like to have it adjacent to the Fort Ethan Allen sign that we see up next to the sidewalk along Old Glebe Road. Again, by doing that, we can help kind of correct the narrative that has unintentionally been created by the monument. And we are also making the sign itself more accessible to visitors. Again, Civil War Trails brochures are distributed across the country and across the world. People do look for these. The current Fort Ethan Allen sign is located in a very secluded wooded area of Glebe Park, which is just down the block from, or rather just down the street a little bit from Fort Ethan Allen Park. So anyone who is following the Civil War trails and wants to find the sign at Fort Ethan Allen is going to have a very hard time finding it. The sign in its current location actually fell into disrepair over the last few years, and it was only in the last year or so that we actually had any kind of push to get it repaired. So, just in short, this sort of new interpretation at Fort Ethan Allen is something that I think is very sorely needed in Arlington Parks as a whole, but also in regards to the Fort Ethan Allen Monument. If this is approved, we would be creating a sign that would be much easier for the public to find. It would be much easier for out-of-county tourists to find if they are following the Civil War trails. And it will be presenting a very important part of Arlington County Civil War history that is relevant to the Fort Ethan Allen site, and that Fort Ethan Allen does not currently interpret.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. It was a fabulous amount of information, and we rely on you as our Civil War experts, so thank you so much. I believe that I know that I sent out some comments from Mr. Byrne earlier this week, and Mr. Byrne is also signed up to speak on this item and on the next. I believe I saw Mr. Byrne join us. Mr. Byrne, are you ready to speak?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much. Your 3 minutes have begun.
Okay. Mr. McNair is proposing to replace a Civil War Trail sign in Glebe Park with a new sign that would commemorate the 107th Regiment of the U.S. Colored Troops, USCT. DPR is further proposing to place a new sign near Old Glebe Road at the north corner of Fort Ethan Allen Park, near some other signs. However, the new sign cannot contain any information about the activities of those troops at Fort Ethan Allen, and that's a big thing. The submission does not adequately document some of the information in the new sign. For example, the submission lacks a copy of one of its proposed photographs. We need this. I couldn't find one on the Library of Congress website, not the one to refer to. DPR should. The DPR's proposal is not a good one. The existing sign contains much information about Fort Ethan Allen, including its function, fortification, gunnery. The sign contains an important summary of all the features in the park. DPR should move that sign to the frequently visited intersection of Old Glebe Road and the access street to the Madison Community Center at the southwest corner of Fort Ethan Allen Park, rather than the site he proposed. The sign would then be next to the county's Defenses of Washington historic marker for the fort. DPR should not replace it with a sign that is not specific to the fort. I visited the park today. I found that the park contains 9 signs, as Mr. McNair stated. However, those signs do not contain all the information that is in the sign that DPR wants to remove, either singly or in combination. As he said, it is rather technical, but people want that in some cases. Several of those signs contain information about the fort's fortification and gunnery. However, none contain as much information in detail about the cannons and smaller guns as its existing sign does. The public will lose that information if each destroys a sign. Because it is not specific to any fort, DPR should place such a proposed sign in Fort C.F. Smith Park. That park contains DPR's Civil War Interpretive Center. That's where a non-specific sign belongs. U.S. Army headquarters assigned the 7th Regiment of the USCT to the defense of Washington after Confederate General Robert E. Lee had surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia. So they had made that assignment about several months after that. DPR could therefore place its sign near the existing sign in the north section of the park that as Mr. McNeil described, that describes the sale of the fort's materials to the public if it does not want to install it in Fort C.F. Smith. So he has that existing sign, which he mentions, describes the sale, and they can put the sign right next to that one. That's where it would belong. But the important thing here is that they were assigned there after the war ended, and the purpose of being assigned was that to demolish, to basically dismantle the forts. That is not mentioned anywhere in what he said. That's an important point. I have submitted to you text and photographs of Civil War trail signs that accurately describe the activities of the regiment at Fort Corcoran and Fort Woodbury. Those are not in park property. The county should fund and install those sites at each of these forts with the help of the Civil War Trail program. So that's where those two new signs should go. They won't be on park property, and they cost about $200 each, something like that. I don't know who would be able to cost of that, perhaps a historic preservation program, but somebody could. Please review those signs that I submitted, the two signs, at this meeting or a later one. They tell a story about the 7th P, this 107th Regiment, that is different from the one that is not that DPR is not proposing. It is really important to state that the headquarters did not want to assign troops really to man the fortifications of the defense of Washington. Its purpose, as specified in the order, was to have them dismantle the forts.
Great, thank you so much.
So that's an important point. So I'm telling a different story in the signs I proposed.
Perfect, thank you so much, and we appreciate it. Please stay on the line for the rest of the discussion and for the next one, since you are also signed up to speak about that. Mr. McNair, do you have anything to add before we start the discussion?
Oh, yeah, certainly, and I do thank you for all of those comments, Bernie. I've been working for Arlington since 2016. There is nothing that I love more than the public interpretation of the forts of Arlington, and I am open to doing it in just about any way we can. Now, I guess a couple points of clarity on my end here. So first off, what we are proposing right now, just to make clear, is not the addition of a brand new sign. It is the moving of the existing sign and changing its current language, because all of that is covered under our $200 annual membership. So the minute we start talking about adding new signs, that is a flat fee of $2,000 per sign if we want to do it with Civil War Trails, plus another $200 annually. Now, that being said, interpretive signs do not have to be done through Civil War Trails. Arlington County, the CNI unit for Parks and Rec, we have contracted with other organizations to make signs. I know Historic Preservation has contracted with other organizations to make signs. And, any sort of interpretation of Fort Corcoran or Fort Woodbury outside these Parks and Rec spaces, I think are also needed. I would just sort of throw out there that, the ultimate purpose of this sign really is to tell the human story of the 107th USCT, because they have a story that is, I would argue, very atypical to the vision that many people have of Union soldiers and also of USCT soldiers, as they were from a Union state that kept slavery legal for as long as possible. Many of these soldiers were formerly enslaved and put in the United States Army by their former enslavers. It's a very uncomfortable part of history that really highlights the sacrifice and the bravery of these particular soldiers. And so when we were drafting the sign, our intention was not to, again, go with the more technical descriptions of their duties in Arlington, but to rather honor that journey that began oftentimes in slavery in the state of Kentucky and ended in freedom in the District of Columbia and its surrounding counties, which included Arlington. I do not propose that this sign should be seen as any kind of replacement for future interpretation at Fort Corcoran or Fort Woodbury, which would be Roslyn and Courthouse area respectively. And the CNI department is always happy to collaborate with historic preservation and other organizations who want help making such signs. I merely put forward that the sign that is before us right now for the application is not in any way affecting or taking potential signs away from those locations. Those would be separate issues that, again, I would be more than happy to follow up on with anyone who is interested in the county or outside.
Great, thank you. The discussions with the board, I would mention that Mr. Laporte is on the line, and I know that he often has comments on markers, so I want to make sure that we remember that he's on the line.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. So with the board now, any comments for anybody? Any comments or questions?
I have a question about the alternative interpretation. Would that be instead of the above language, the language above it, or in addition to it?
So it sounds like we had a question about the alternative interpretation, which I believe you're referring to that letter that's produced underneath. With Civil War Trails typically has a pretty strict word count for their signs, usually averaging about 200 to 250 words. And if you couldn't tell, I get rather talky when it comes to this sort of subject. So I maxed out on our word count with the 3 main paragraphs. That being said, there is always space on the Civil War Trail signs for images. Again, the 3 images we included were the 107th at Fort Corcoran, the image from the Alexandria Gazette article, and the image of Sergeant Major Singer. Now, I provided that as an alternative form of interpretation, knowing that Civil War Trails wanted to make this as much of a human story as possible. And that letter, I think, is one of the strongest pieces of evidence I've ever read. So I had put that forward to Civil War Trails to put in a margin or a side panel if they deemed that there was room. The problem was they would not begin drafting the language into the actual sign template until the new language or until the new location for the sign was approved. So right now, what you are seeing is the raw text and the raw images, without any of the flair that you would see in the typical Civil War Trail sign.
So theoretically, all of that could be used.
Theoretically, yes. It would come down to an issue of space. We want to make the sign as accessible as possible. We find that anything more than 250 words, people will not read the sign. And if there's too much text, if the print is too small, it's difficult on the visually impaired. So we're taking all of this into consideration. If it turns out that there will be too much text, the letter portion may disappear, but everything else is essentially locked in.
See, Jerry, your hand is raised up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate what John had to say, and I've always enjoyed his interpretations. I do think that Bernie had some valid points here. I guess my main problem with this, when I reviewed this historic marker, I couldn't understand what was going on, and I don't think that if this text was put at anywhere at Fort Ethan Allen, it would explain why this historic marker is here, okay, which is the main function of historic markers. Some people may think this is rather technical, but that's the reason we have historic markers, is to point out to people that at this site something happened. And the whole text here doesn't really explain why this is here. It's a great, sort of a generalized story about the colored troops that were raised in Kentucky. And I went online and did some research, and there's a recent article on the colored troops from Kentucky, and the 107th is mentioned there. But I think we really need to tell why this sign is here, and the current text doesn't really do that. Okay, and I'm concerned, as Mr. Byrne is, the other sign that's there does contain some technical language, and people who go look for historic markers, that's frequently what they're looking for. A lot of Civil War buffs are following these types of things, and I haven't compared the text like Mr. Byrne has to see what's being taken away and not being replaced, but I really think we need to sort of start from the bottom and say, why are we putting, if we want to put this here, we have to say why this is here. And I think it would more logically go at some other place in the county rather than the Glebe Park or Fort East Allen Park. It's an untold story, but I guess the question is, where should it be told? And I'm not sure that this is the best place, since, we do have the one article that mentions that some of the troops were garrisoned here, but at a minimum, we should sort of start out with that. This marker is here because, rather than telling the story, and people are just wondering, why is this sign here?
Aren't there 2 or 3 other markers there as well?
There are 9
There's
collectively
9
on
total.
site.
I mean, out of those 9, does one of them maybe tell the story that you're talking about already?
This one here, or the,
No, I don't mean what the new marker would say, but the sort of basic Civil War port information that you see on every sign in every port around here. But doesn't one of those signs already contain that?
This board reviewed all 9
Yeah.
a decade ago, just reminding you.
Yeah. So I guess I would disagree, Jerry, that this is a slightly more esoteric look at what happened at this park, and the main story is already told in these other markers.
I'm inclined to agree with you as well, Dick. I have actually stumbled onto the sign in Lee Park. I was surprised, given the location, that it was there. But I do think that it is very important as this human element, as Mr. Bear's proposing to do. I do agree maybe some revisions could be good to sort of clarify it. It is a little hard for me to envision it as it is right now, but I love the idea of adding the human story to it and really focusing on 107. I think that really would add something new. I've gone to a lot of these port markers myself, and oftentimes, once you've kind of read one of them, you do get overwhelmed with some of the technical aspects to it. So we're trying to make history more accessible. I think this is a wonderful approach to try to do it. Because you can maybe just sort of lock the text down a little bit more, come back with a draft, kind of something more final.
Any other thoughts?
Hey, Jerry.
Oh, Jerry, your hands up again.
Yeah, I can't understand. Are you calling on me?
Yes, yeah, Jerry. Yeah.
your hands.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't, I should have lowered my hand, but I didn't hear everything. It's difficult for me to understand. I think people are not really speaking into the microphone as well as they could be. But I haven't looked at the sign that's being replaced to see, I think the story of Mr. Lincoln's forts is an important story, and I don't know exactly whether it's being retold in the other signs up there. If it's duplicative, okay. But my main point is that the text as presented doesn't really, I think it's good to have, history that's more accessible and to tell human stories. And I think the text is on the way to getting there. But frankly, I don't even think that the Civil War trails would approve the text as proposed, because it doesn't relate to the site that it would be is proposed to be placed at. So it's more like a like a Wikipedia article about the 107th, and doesn't say why it's there. And I think we really need to focus on why is this sign being placed? What is this marker? What story is this marker being trying to tell about this place? And it doesn't really do that right now.
I would respond by saying it's not always about the place, it's about the people who are there. And we just reviewed on the screen 3 or 4 of the markers that are already there that consider the place quite well. I mean, I didn't read them all while they were being depicted, but I do remember reviewing them.
But it sounds like it's an introductory paragraph. It just needs to be contextualized better as to why it's relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you could say, just introduce that, these companies garrisoned at Fort Allen. We are, and then tell the story.
I don't have a problem with being at 40th and Allen because there are a lot of other parts that people aren't going to go visit those sites, whereas they may actually go and visit it at a place like 40th and Allen. For what that's worth.
But actually, this is separate from this discussion. People talk about other markers. If you find someone who's willing to pay money, not with the county money. We have that state historic marker, standard old white metal sign, block from here, right across from Metro, that talks about the defenses of Washington. So if someone enterprise and wanted to fund this in the future, it's a great place to add the story in that little strip between Clarendon and Wilson. That's a county marker. So that's a separate topic, but that's another place we could dive in for those who aren't going to trek up to Ethan.
And the original markers that the HLRB commissioned were fort markers, right? The defenses of Washington were the first series.
Yes, when the marker program was established many decades ago, defenses of Washington.
I have a question. So is this story told, or any story about the USCT told at any other ports in Arlington currently?
I don't
think so.
Okay.
John, can you verify that?
Currently, no. In fact, the 107th USCT story is a regimental story that is largely unknown. In Civil War history, so many people have dedicated their lives to writing regimental histories, tracking every footstep in every battle that every regiment fought in. And the 107th USCT does not get that treatment. They don't have an official regimental history. Just the fact that there's been so much debate about whether or not a sign about them here at Fort Ethan Allen is relevant, it is indicative of just how important it is, I think, to understanding their place in Arlington County. So this would really be the only public interpretation of the 107th USCT as a specific unit of men anywhere in Arlington. And again, while I'm not an expert, just based on my contacts with other people, it would very likely be the only one in the greater defenses of Washington, outside of the odd mentions of the photographs specifically that you might find in other museums.
And John, can I confirm that the largest collection of markers about Civil War history is on Fort Ethan Allen? So that is, if someone were to come for the majority of the information, the majority of the markers are at Fort Ethan Allen.
That is correct. Again, so Fort Ethan Allen has those 9 signs already that were made in-house. I believe you were flashing those on the screen a minute ago. Additionally, there are 3 signs at Fort C.F. Smith Park, and then there are a couple other one-shot signs scattered around. One at Arlington Mills, like I said, and one at Foxcroft Heights Park across from Arlington National Cemetery. So it's a relatively small pool, but the vast majority of the number is at Fort Ethan Allen.
And the reason I asked is just, it seems like we have an opportunity with this sign to tell the story. And if we tried to tell it at a fort that maybe it was a little bit better told at, we may never get to tell it. So we have the opportunity now, we can tell it now. And then if the other signs of the other forts come up, tell it there as well. But I think if we put it off, it may never.
It's well taken that Jerry's point is well taken that we should explain why this is the story being told closer to the beginning, but at the same time, we have no better place to tell a general story about all the Black soldiers who served in Arlington. So why not this place? Why is this place any worse than any other place? And it seems like this is
Yeah, I might just say that if you're talking about places in Arlington to tell all about all the Black soldiers, Theodore Roosevelt Island was a training ground for U.S. colored troops. So that's probably the most, Arlington County doesn't control that. That's under the control of the United States Park Service. But if you were talking about the presence of U.S. colored troops in Arlington, that would probably be the best place to tell that story. Here, we're only talking about the 107th, which, I did read this article that just came out in February on Kentucky U.S. colored troops. And they do have in that article, you can look it up online. They do have where the 107th served. And I did some further research online, and John is correct. I couldn't find anything else, but they were at the Battle of Petersburg, which was a very consequential battle for the Civil War. And the regiment needs to have its story told. So I would, very much favor if we can find the right place and the right language. Fort Ethan Allen may be the right place, but we have to get the right language so that people understand why this sign is being placed here.
Okay, so John, you said that the Civil War Trail Association organization will not consider it, like the first thing they want is approval of the location, and then we can tweak with the language afterwards. Like, what is the priority of things that needs to be decided?
So Civil War Trails will begin fabrication, or rather will begin design and fabrication of a sign once a location has been definitively chosen. So I think the question was asked whether or not this text as it is would be approved by Civil War Trails. I'm in relatively frequent contact with the executive director of Civil War Trails. I'm one of Arlington County's liaisons to the project. The text has been approved. It does in keep with, like I said, their new mission focus, which is to shift away from technical military histories and more towards human stories. But that being said, though, there is certainly room to tweak the language. It's just they will not begin a design layout until until the location has been set in stone, I guess.
Bob, you have any commentary or add? Alex?
We're the cheap seats. So could we then basically final side? We would like to see a contextualized second edition text.
That sounds like I'll draft a motion based on that. So I move that HLRB approve location for Ethan Allen marker contingent upon additional edits to the text be reviewed by the HLRB in the future. I just we're looking for edits that are place specific or.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
My sense is that it does need sort of a topic at the top. It mentions specifically the
To
who they were.
contextualize.
Yeah, just something that sort of sets it up. The topic period.
Yeah.
This group was there, and this is what they did, and then
we can kind of
go into the rest.
What's there now? Yeah. So, did you get that, Michael?
I did. You want me to read
Yeah.
the suggestion out?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think do that.
One.
You're in the hot seat tonight.
I know. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
I move that the HALRB approve the location of the Fort Ethan Allen marker contingent upon additional edits to the text, which contextualize the regiment to Fort Ethan Allen. These edits will be reviewed by the HALRB at a future time.
Any seconds? Second. Not there. Not yet. Please call the roll.
Please say yes if you support the motion. Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Laporte?
Yes.
Mr. Medin?
Yes.
Ms. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Wenchel?
Yes.
And Mr. Woodruff?
Yes.
Unanimous.
So how will this work? Will John come back with new text and review it again?
John, I was going to offer that if you wanted to confer with our staff to kind of address the contextualization before you bring something back to the HLRB, we're happy to help with that. So whether that's in April or whenever you're ready.
I may take you up on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so now on to the next marker review. That's Arlington Junction Park.
Great. So this park came to us a few months ago when DPR was proposing a new name for it. And now the same applicant is presenting a historic marker, which is presenting the text so far. Mr. Ewart, are you on the call?
Yes, I am on the call.
Hi, perfect. Would you like to, let's see, do I have the right one up first? So would you like to give us a little background?
Yeah, I can provide some background. So some more context for the park. The county board approved a park master plan for the park in June 2021. And as part of that park master plan, we identified that there would be a future process where we would identify a name. As Serena mentioned, I came to the HLRB, can't remember exactly when, a few months ago, to get the name identified, and we ended up, after some community feedback from Dr. Byrne, landing on the name Arlington Junction Park, which would subsequently be approved by the county board for the future park name. Since then, we've proceeded with design development for the park, and one of the aspects of that is some interpretive signage that gives some context to the historical nature of this area. And the two things that we wanted to focus on were the Alexandria Canal and the Arlington Junction, which the park is named after. I sent over some draft language to Serena to just kind of confirm the accuracy of what was being said. And my goal tonight is to just get some feedback from the board and make sure that what we're telling the community is accurate. And I'm interested to hear from what you all have to say. Thank you.
So Mr. Byrne has signed up to speak as well, and I submitted his comments to you in advance. Mr. Byrne, is he still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Great. You have
Okay.
3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. I like this sign a lot better than the other one. The The Department of Parks and Recreation has the proposed language for an informational sign for the new Arlington Junction Park. The sign will contain both information about the park and sections that describe the history of the Alexandria Canal and Arlington Junction. The format and language for the sign are generally good. However, the histories do contain several errors. They're small errors, but they're errors nevertheless. Additionally, it sounds like important information about the canal and the junction that the public should learn when visiting the park. These include such little interesting things that the canal actually is now the route of the canal is actually the route of the Blue Line, and when it was built on George Washington Parke Custis' Arlington plantation. That's an important thing to be a sign is describing the canal. There are, as I say, several additional interesting pieces of information about Arlington Junction that it basically served the same function as the Pentagon Metro Station does now. And also that it does say that sign does say that it was the last trolley line that still exists in Arlington. Well, it really wasn't. Another branch was still in existence for about 3 or 4 more years, and then the WOD had electric trolleys until 1941. Anyway, I've sent you a copy of some revised language, which is historically correct and has those important points. I hope you had a chance to read it. If so, please look at that language because that really is historically accurate. The errors are not small, but the additional information are not big. But the important thing is the additional information about, that the Blue Line was basically where the canal is, which practically nobody knows, and that the Pentagon Metro Station serves the same function as that. In addition, it's kind of important to say in the text that this was a triangular set of tracks. That's important because that triangle enabled the trolleys to go in different directions. And the other additional point that I put in there is that it was named that. What people may say, well, why is this named Arlington Junction? Because they say, well, it's in Arlington. No, that's not the reason. At that time, it was called Alexandria County, and it was named after Arlington National Cemetery, which the trolleys went to and was quite close by. That's an important point to say. This was not named just because it was in Arlington. It was named because it was near Arlington National Cemetery at the time that the county was named Alexandria County. So just look at my letter and that I sent you. If you still have a copy with you, review that instead of this. It's not greatly different. This is a good letter, but it just has the DPR has produced a good letter, but it just has a few errors in it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your comments. You are exactly 3 minutes on the dot. Appreciate. Thank you, Mr. Ewert.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. All right, I believe discussion is open.
Okay, let's open any comments or
I would note that I do have a copy of Mr. Laporte's comments that were submitted to us in advance.
Hey, Jerry, do you have anything to add?
No, I just I took what Mr. Byrne just described. I don't recognize what he was talking about because the language that I saw didn't contain any language about the Blue Line, so I may not have worked with his latest draft, but I took a draft that Mr. Byrne had submitted and just tried to simplify it a little bit and sort of take some extraneous information out that I thought detracted from the directness of the information, like the Teardrop Park. I think that's kind of an urban planning thing that's really not important in the history of this space. And I just tried to simplify it and make it more direct and a little bit shorter. And but if we should put something about the Blue Line in there, maybe that would be a good idea too. But that's not contained. Another thing that I thought was an error was it talked about when the Alexandria Canal was started, it allowed Virginia merchants access to Georgetown. And actually, Arlington wasn't part of Virginia at the time. It was part of the District of Columbia. So I corrected that, what I thought was an error in the text. And I just changed the language so that it was, I just said the merchant, I think merchants on the south side of the Potomac River, something like that, rather than Virginians, because they technically weren't Virginians at the time. So that's about it. I think mine flows a little bit better and reads better and takes care of some of the extraneous. The only thing, if I were doing it again, there's a suggestion at the end about that this was the last thing that led to a toll-free bridge over the Potomac. And if I were doing it again, I would take that information out because it just sort of teases the reader and doesn't really say anything about the movement to put a toll-free bridge across. So I think that's another piece of sort of extraneous information that probably could be taken out without any, it actually would be better without that kind of teaser information at the end.
Thanks, Jerry. Comments or questions?
Please look at my most recent draft. I did send it to you, and I've sent it to Serena, because that really is the one you should be looking at, not that other one. But Serena, I think you probably got that about 3 or 4 days ago, the most recent draft. And
Yes.
I think you sent it to, yeah, so to give them that one so they can look at it.
I think I've sent all of them.
What? But okay, but that one talks about the blue line. Make sure, so put that one up for them.
This is just real quick. I wanted to ask, with the blue line, with the Alexandria Canal being aligned with where the blue line is, it looks like it was before the Pentagon, but by the time it came down towards, as the Alexandria Canal actually goes straight through the middle of the Pentagon and then curves around, so the blue line code goes like this and the Alexandria Canal kind of goes like this. So by the time it gets down to where the park's being proposed, it was no longer aligned with the blue line. At least that's what we're seeing with our kind of archaeological site pattern.
That's not, well, that's explained in that letter, in that last version that I sent. That's why I want you to look at that, because it went through the Custis Plantation, and that created a right of way. Now, what I didn't mention in the letter is later on, a branch of the Pennsylvania Railroad was built on the towpath in that area, and the blue line replaced that when that went out of business. The blue line was built right in that same right of way. So now that's not in the area of Arlington Junction, but my letter explains that. Let's see if this is the right one. Yeah, this is the right one. Does it talk about the blue line here?
Yes.
Okay, that's the right one. So look at that one.
I mean, I agree that it would have been on Custis, the plantation, because all of the Pentagon and Arlington National Cemetery was part of the Custis Plantation. But if you would be able to provide us the source of how it was aligned with the blue line, because I mean, I do see it, but then once it hits right before the Pentagon, it doesn't.
Yeah, right. When it gets to the Pentagon, it diverges.
Okay.
But yeah, that's absolutely right. And by the time it was in near Beaumont Junction Park, it was there. Basically the trolley was built along the towpath. Whereas the towpath where the part of the towpath where it was near through the Custis Plantation was taken over by another railroad. It was called the Roslyn Connecting Railroad, or Franklin, Pennsylvania. So that was a right of way, and basically the blue line followed that right of way. I can send you a map that shows you that. It's one of the maps of that area which I have that actually shows both. That shows you the route of the well, not the blue line. It shows the route of the canal and the railroad, and basically, I have if you actually look at the Wikipedia article on the Alexandria Canal, it's in there. It's because I actually wrote that article, wrote part of it. So that is in the Wikipedia article on the Alexandria Canal, with the documentation to it. But I can send you more information that follows that history. But it was really the right of way. It was preserved there. But no, that was not where the canal, not at near Arlington Junction. Where Arlington Junction was following. It was the Arlington Junction was where it was at the area that was going near Reed Street, because a lot of it was built from basically where the junction was south to 4 Mile Run. It was following Ead Street more or less. That's where the canal went. It was on the towpath. So that towpath was used by 2 different railroads. It's kind of interesting. And the blue line follows the other railroad. And they actually, if you go back to the records of it, they actually asked for when they were making the blue line, they asked for where are the existing and abandoned railroads located, and that was right on their map, and that's why they chose it. They had the right of way.
Just for context, on the screen you see the orange is the canal line, and then the blue and yellow dotted line is the metro.
Where's the park?
No, that's the metro. That's in that area. Yes, that's true, but not further north. You see, further north, that's outside of that picture. Further north, they coincide. You see, when you go further north, that's where it goes to the Custard Plantation. That's where they coincide. But in the area of the park, well, that is showing that diagram is showing the correct area of where the canal went relative to the park. And you can see it's basically a little bit outside the park, not by much. It's kind of on the area where Reed Street is.
Yeah.
It had more curves than Ead Street has, so it didn't exactly follow Ead Street, but it was close.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne.
But it's further off the picture where it coincides with where it's on went through the Custis Plantation.
Thank you, Dr.
Plantation.
Input. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Can we just review for a second? Like I remember when we discussed this, we settled on the name. But is this a county? Is this going to be a county-owned marker? Or what's the deal with this?
That is correct.
Yes.
So the park is county-owned, and the marker is being put up by the county through contractors that we're looking at.
And the draft language that we saw, is that the Park Services proposal?
It's the Department of Parks and Recreation, so it's the county Parks Department proposal.
Just seems really long for a marker, but I don't know. Does anyone else think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that Jerry's sort of wordsmithing of Bernie's, and it also applies marker here as well, would sort of condense it. I thought that might be a good place to maybe start sort of looking at redrafting. My take on it.
County marker, like what we discussed.
Please look at my most recent version. Start work from that.
We have. Thank you, Mr. Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne.
And then just QR code it out. And if anyone wants the additional information, it's great. It's here. Link it to them. But nobody's going to read more than.
Mr. Ewer, what kind of a sign is it going to be? Can I ask? There's no design information. Is it laminate? Is it aluminium?
We haven't gone through like the materials for it yet. I imagine it would be laminate. That more consistent with kind of like this general interpretive signage that we use in our other parks.
Just checking
was
that
kind
it's
of my sort of sentiment too, is that this is very text heavy for me as well. The question about the blue line to me was almost immaterial. If I was a general reader, this would be way too much, and I would probably, like you said, want to hit a QR code with more information later on. Is there a way to sort of tar this back in a way that would be more accessible to just a general member of the public who might spend 30 seconds to a couple of minutes reading and engaging with it?
I think Jerry's started to do that.
Yeah, I mean, his was pretty good.
Yeah.
Do we want to suggest maybe the Parks Department, Jerry's, and Dr. Byrne's comments and tackle something?
And now that you have some more text, maybe if you could define some sort of a layout so that then we can see how it's going to look. Because obviously if it's spaced out with images, with design on a 2x3 layout, which is usually the size we use, then it may appear less text heavy. And also the context of the images may be helpful if you do want to pursue Dr. Burns' comment about the proximity to everything else around it.
And then, I don't know if it's possible or not, but I noticed an earlier draft had like a reference to Luna Park or something, but maybe some type of graphic or image, if that's possible. I just don't know. I mean, to just sort of break the text up.
Yeah.
Are there images that are proposed for it, the marker? I'm asking.
So not yet. My primary goal with providing the HLRB with this language was to just make sure that what we were saying was accurate and something that you felt was appropriate for an interpretive sign in a park. So far, the feedback has been very helpful, and my plan was to return after the language had kind of been retrofitted to with the mock-up design of what the sign would look like.
Okay, sounds logical.
Do we have an online database or reference for all markers?
The Historic Marker Database online it's an own independent website which has the best collection nationwide because it connects things through subjects, it connects things across county borders, so we don't maintain it because they maintain it.
Another quick question. So did you guys like fact check this? I mean, or is that our job?
I do not have the expertise.
Who is responsible for like insurance? Okay. So yeah,
I did provide resources in the comments on the, but yeah.
Between DPR and Jerry, I feel pretty good.
I have a question about the materials that will be used, because I just happen to be riding by the markers that are at the WNOD where it crosses Columbia Pike, that fairly new park. And I think that's probably not an Arlington thing. I think it's probably a regional park.
The Northern Virginia Conservation Trust.
But those signs they can't be older than a couple of years old and they're already illegible. You can't read them. And I don't know if it's fiberglass or some sort of laminate. It's so, it's just so.
It scratches a lot and then it starts to look thick and yellow.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened. And it happens on a lot of these markers. And I'm just wondering, is there a new technology we're using now to deal with that?
These don't have a permanent lifespan. It's about a decade.
We are seeing better results. So we are currently working on replacing in-kind identical to Campbell markers in Arlington because Mrs. Campbell's desk is going to be donated to the library and there's going to be an event in April. And so we are redoing those signs and we have a different manufacturer and we've noticed that they age better. They're the ones that we had installed, but those are only from 2008. Have that thicker yellow resin on the top that has scuffed, making it quite hard to read. But the newer ones appear to be the laminate, the print is much closer to the surface, and so they remain legible for longer. But UV breaks everything down.
Metal.
Not metal. Well, eventually, yes. But I get your point. Over time, longer, yes. Evolution of the Earth, wise, yes. But then you lose the ability to include images. Because images, there are some ways to include images onto metal markers. They look pretty bad and they do age.
No, I get that.
And metal markers are considered big marks.
Yeah. It's just that these laminate ones are illegible. They're pointless. I mean, they don't.
Can maintain the ones that we have control over.
Does the orientation
Best I can promise.
make a difference? So like a tabletop, I would presume gets more direct sunlight. Perfectly work.
Yes, and also depend as literal orientation. Yes,
Right.
so north facing would be better.
So a
than
north
something
face
south
vertical
facing.
marker is go-to if you're a lamp.
Yes. Also, an urban environment is going to be probably better in terms of shielding it from
Okay, so we need to make a motion on this or just? All right, well, Thank you, Mr. Yu, for your time. Actually, Jerry, you anything else to add, Jerry, or your hand raised previously?
The only thing I had a question about Dr. Burns' suggestion that it was named Arlington Junction after Arlington National Cemetery. The reason I say that is at the time, you know, Arlington or Alexandria County was divided into three magisterial districts, and Arlington was the middle magisterial district. And Arlington was a place name at the time, and it wouldn't surprise me. And it was of course, it was named after Arlington House, but since it was a place name at the time, I wouldn't be surprised that Arlington Junction was named because it was like in the middle of what was called Arlington at the time, but it wasn't what we call Arlington today. It was just a magisterial district of the county at the time. But so we'd have to check that if we want to say that it's named after Arlington Cemetery. I'm not sure that that's accurate.
No, actually, the reason is that junctions are named after where the line is going. Beaumont Junction was a junction of the, it was a junction of the train line that ran to Beaumont, down to Beaumont. Manassas Junction, which is now was named because it went to Manassas Gap. It was a junction of where a main line went to a different point. Well, this line, the new line, went to Arlington National Cemetery and there to basically the lower end, at the base of it.
Mr. Byrne.
And so that's what it's all about. It came for that reason.
Sorry to cut you off, Mr. Byrne. We're gonna wrap this one up pretty soon. Mr. Your hand raised?
Yeah. I just wanted a logistical question about coordination because we're not seeking a motion on this, as you guys have recognized. So I would just coordinate with Serena, I'm guessing, to like make sure I get this language that from Jerry. Would this be edited further, or should I just coordinate with you on that?
I will work with Jerry on this language again, just to see how we feel about it after this conversation, and then I assume the commission would like to see it laid out.
Yep. So once we get the language, we'll put it into a mock-up design, and then we can return to the HALRB at a later date.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Now on to the chairman's report. So the report, the amending report this week is that last Thursday I met with the county board at a working session for the draft budget. Because previously the draft budget does have proposed cuts, specifically to the consulting services for the HPP staff. So I sat with the board and essentially made the point that even though it's a relatively small cut in the overall scheme of things under the budget, has a very outside effect to the staff's ability to do work, and particularly the not so much the adoption of the historical master plan, but particularly the areas of implementation of the master plan. And one of those being the HRI update as well. So I made the point that it's almost like throwing good money after bad, sort of in a reverse way, essentially, by making this a small cut to the HB staff's budget. So we'll see where it lands, and I guess the final budget won't be decided until after our next meeting. So we're all lands out there. They had a couple of follow-up questions about. They had one follow-up question about this cut, and they also had a question about the historic preservation fund money as well, which was like not related to cut per se. So they were interested, showed an interest in the program. We'll see where it all lands. They made a decision already.
Thank you again for coming out to advocate.
One more small amendment, maybe not. Just to sort of get out in front of part of what here actually. If you haven't yet, please consider volunteering for our open house.
So in terms of staff report, we're continuing to work on editing our draft conservation plan. We got that from the consultant. We're providing some last edits, photos, captions, things like that. So we're fingers crossed that we remain on track to be able to release that in early to mid-April. To that end, we are planning for all of the engagement that's to come over the spring and summer, starting with farmers market in the middle of April, and then the important information session that we want to have on April 26th here with the HLRB. So as we mentioned before, this would be a special meeting. This would be the only topic on the agenda. Our consultant will be coming to debrief you on it. You can ask your questions. We'll walk you through kind of the past 3.5 years of this planning process. So it'll be your chance to really kind of dive into the plan with us. So our goal is to be able to get the draft out to the public in advance, and then you would have time to prepare for that meeting as well. So I just wanted to do a quick show of hands. People have that on your calendar already. It's another Wednesday. It's the Wednesday after our April 19th meeting. You don't need to vote, so we don't technically need quorum, but we would prefer to have as many of you there as possible so we can learn all about the plan.
So regular meeting 19th, special meeting 22nd.
Correct. Same time, different room. We have to reserve a different space, but we'll tell you more about that later.
Same bat time, same bat room.
On March 29th. I think when I put them in my calendar, I just did
Technically, we used to do that,
Okay.
but we haven't done that in a very, very long time. So
I will delete.
3rd and 4th Wednesdays of April is what we're talking about.
Okay, gotcha.
What time will that be?
Same time, 6:30. And again, this will be the only thing on the agenda, so you'll have taken care of all your COA business the week before, any markers, any other things, any other business, so this will be the main attraction. Is there anything you wanted to say about open house?
Sure. Reminder is Saturday, May 6th from 12 to 3 at the Central Library's auditorium. If you're available to help us for setup, the actual event, takedown, even if it's just an hour, please reach out to me via email and I'll sign you up. Thank you.
12 to 3.
There's going to be a lot of different people attending. It should be interesting even just to attend.
Yes. Thank you.
There'll be a lot of, and there's a kid-friendly area, right, for
Yeah.
child entertaining.
So if you are parenting that day, you could bring your kiddo along and they would be entertained.
They will be at the library, which
Yes.
always has a lot of programming and has parking.
And that was everything we had. I do want to do a quick roll call to make sure we have quorum for April for the regular meeting. So if you can let me know if you're able to be here in person or participating another way, or you're not available. So this is for April 19th. John. Amari. Alex.
Yes. In person.
Jerry, do you know you'll be here in April for the regular meeting?
Will I be here next month?
Yes, April 19th.
I expect to be, yes.
Okay. Bob,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Katie,
No, I don't think
not in person or not?
I. Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Mark,
Yeah, should be.
Andy,
Yes.
and Dick.
Thank you all for responding to my desperate plea to fulfill quorum. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's serious now, and we don't have quorum. Can't convene, so. That's all we have.
Weren't we gonna change the rules?
We were, maybe one day we'll get to that.
It's in the works.
Get a little busy.
Anything else for the good of order? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I did not lie to you. I wasn't sure.
That's a
We have